Okay.
And have one of those days. Sorry.
All right. We're all set. Okay, now we're ready, Mr.
Ready, Teddy.
Never happened, Captain.
All right.
Here we go. Well, welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, and Mark Hahn is gone for the rest of the day. That rascal. He got an important call.
What a gig.
Yeah, but we do have Rob Spinoza in the studio.
Went into a phone booth and he turned it
That's
to
right.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now we have to answer the trivia question.
You got it.
Okay, so here was the question, and the the trivia theme was they died in the lyrics. All right, how was Earl killed in the Dixie Chicks song "Goodbye Earl"? Ready for this?
Yeah.
Poison food.
Well,
That's kind of a tough one, unless you know.
if it
what
had been
is.
more colorful than that, the Dixie Chicks' career might have lasted a little bit longer too.
Yeah,
So-
maybe that's the whole problem.
Poison food, that doesn't really excite the audience these days like it may have done in the 1400s.
No, but just wait
Okay.
till we get to question number 3.
Yeah,
That's
okay,
gonna-
then
that
you're
one's going to be
sticking
a
to
tough one there.
All right.
So, Rob, you got some good stuff for us.
Yeah, I was going through a bunch of articles that I peruse on a regular basis, and I thought I would talk a little bit about some stats. When you read certain articles and they list different things, and it strikes you as odd because you actually see them staring at you in numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I have some stuff on the buy side of real estate, of course, and some stuff on the sell side. And what I thought we'd do maybe is just kind of contrast them and point out, from an insider's perspective, what's unique about that. So I wanted to start with the selling one. Now, I'm not a real estate agent. I'm on the mortgage side of things. But every agent I know in this county and in a lot of the San Francisco Bay Area are talking about how little inventory there is for sale. And, you get a little bit of a respite maybe going into the holidays from the buyer demand. But then you also start seeing sellers taking houses off the market, which further confounds real estate agents. So if there are any of them out there listening on a Sunday when they've got an open house, then maybe they'd be, or Saturday or Sunday, they might be interested by some of this stuff. So more than half, 53% of potential sellers don't realize that the number of homes for sale on the market is lower, giving buyers fewer choices. So they don't even know if you're, I'm thinking about listing my house. I think the biggest issue is where do you go once you sell, of course.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people have that dilemma. But a lot of sellers don't even realize that the demand is higher just because the numbers are low.
I guess one thing that, it's like what happens if you look in the Sunday paper to see how many open houses there are.
Right.
So that's kind of one indication.
Wow, there's so many homes for sale, but you don't take into consideration the specific type of home, how it relates to your home.
But that's where it is.
Yeah. Right. Real estate being local. Second item on here is 80% think credit scores make it difficult to get a loan. So they're still thinking maybe along the lines of 10 years ago, where they feel like, okay, if I put my house on the market, who's going to be able to buy it? Not aware that.
Not so much for them buying, but whether or not they think the buyers will be able to
I think
buy
on both sides of the equation,
Okay.
they're thinking that credit scores being a driver of eligibility, whereas a lot of that's come back.
How, in the past compared to now, what would you say? Like, you used to have a 750 FICO score. Now you need 700.
Well,
or what would you?
it used to accommodate more, and there were two reasons for that. One was, of course, subprime, which by and large no longer exists, but also FHA loans would accommodate. That was the old joke. FHA stands for 500's all right, meaning you get a credit score in the 500s, you still get an FHA loan. That's no longer the case. So most lenders have overlaid that. You start to see the entry point for most desirable programs around 620. The average FICO score in the United States is 687. Okay? And so I think that if more sellers recognize that a 687 still gets a lot of buyers very desirable terms, they would understand that FICO scores alone are not the prime restriction. That's number 2 under. 76% tied into this, of course. 76% believe stricter lending requirements make it more difficult to get a mortgage.
Now that I could easily see because you hear about the Dodd-Frank rules and it seems like it's almost impossible to get.
Well, and it also depends on where, again, the property is located, who the target demographic for the property would be, and then yes, there are restrictions with lending, no doubt about that. but I also think that a lot of sellers and potential buyers don't recognize how far we've come in the last, 7 years now, if you think about 2008 being the worst of it.
Well, yeah, 2008 was the worst, but things kept declining 2009,
9 and 10, you're right,
even
absolutely
11, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and we were dealing with that, but what I'm starting to see, and I'm seeing this across the board, even Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines, we're starting to see some loosening. It's subtle. It's not the significant kind of things you might expect. It's in the weeds kind of stuff.
but aren't they? Wasn't October 1st some new guidelines that made things even harder?
October 3rd was TRID. Yeah, that's the Tiller RESPA Integrated Disclosure Law. So that changes the way, and that's not on this. I think if we gave it another 6 months, it might be. So TRID, what TRID does is it changes the timelines required for a borrower's inspection of the closing disclosure. So customarily, what most people are used to is they go into escrow, they get their loan approved, their loan documents get sent to escrow, then they go in and sign. What's changed in the purchase now is that the lender is actually preparing the closing disclosure, not the escrow company. And then they have a 3-day waiting period to inspect that document before they go in and sign. It's a mandatory, they cannot waive that. And what that does is it puts lenders in a position where you no longer have the flexibility to rush things through to closing. Some would say that is in the buyer's benefit, that's in the borrower's benefit. But clearly, in most cases that we see, the understanding is pretty clear throughout, and the buyer wants to have their documents as quickly as they can so they can close on time.
Okay.
And that's an added restriction to that. Finally, 68% think that current homeowners are trapped into their mortgages and are unable to sell their current homes. So a lot of people have equity that they don't realize they've attained in the last 2-3 years, maybe, and they still think they're underwater.
Wow, I mean, it's funny. I was thinking a lot of people would think that I finally am not underwater.
Right, you'd be watching it like a hawk, right?
So, with all this real serious stuff, I do have a joke
Okay.
that I need to tell, and it has to do with, because you mentioned TRID,
Yeah.
right? So, believe it or not, I've got a joke about TRIDs.
Okay.
So, there is these people called TRIDs.
Okay.
And they keep trying to cross this bridge, but there's a troll that won't let them cross the bridge, right? And so of course the TRIDs go to they go across the bridge and they keep getting kicked all the time,
Okay.
right? And so this rabbi is friends with the TRIDs.
Of course, there's a rabbi.
Of course, there has to be a rabbi, right? So the TRIDs go to their favorite rabbi, and they say, "Hey, the rabbi, every time us TRIDs keep going across this bridge, this stupid troll keeps kicking us." He goes, "Well, let me see about that. See what happens." So the rabbi goes and he comes and goes, no problem. The troll doesn't kick him at all. And he goes, "I don't get it. Why, Mr. Troll? What's going on?" He goes, "Silly rabbi, kicks her for TRIDs."
I knew we were going in that direction.
Of course, you have to know that one. Okay.
Well, there's not, the TRID regulation. In fact, I was just at a signing today, and I was talking with the escrow officer there, and I said, "How are you guys adjusting to the fact that basically regulation is taken out of your control what is fundamentally yours to control?"
It's like the baseball replay. It's out of the control of the umpires.
Right, and they said, "Well, we're kind of on the edge about it right now because, like you mentioned, it started on October 3rd.
Yeah.
That will mean that we'll start seeing our first TRID compliant closings this week, next
Oh,
week, because
yeah, good point.
they had to, in order to have a TRID compliant closing, you have to have a TRID compliant loan estimate at the beginning of the transaction, and that started on October 3rd.
Wow.
So that's what we're seeing there.
All right. Tell you what, we're going to cut to a second commercial break. Again, the theme is They Died in the Lyrics. And by the way, this last segment is sponsored, believe it or not, by Pacific Trade Exchange.
Oh, okay.
Now, Pacific Trade Exchange, it's kind of cool. They do bartering and usually business to business.
Okay.
And it's really pretty cool because it's like a cashless society, almost like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so you got to check. For those of you out there who've never thought about bartering, it's a good way to do business, and it's legal. It's all above board.
Because bartering is a taxable sort of.
Absolutely.
You gotta,
It's not
under the table,
no,
right?
No,
I think people think bartering is like, we're avoiding.
it's illegal.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's totally legal.
Yeah.
And you got to check out. Give Brian Capehart a call. But go check
That's
out
pretty
the
neat.
website.
Yeah.
It's called Pacific Trade Exchange. I've been dealing with it for a while, and they've treated me very well. Okay, so here is our commercial break here. Trivia question. What was the 1972 Bread hit? Remember, there's a group called Bread hit that was written by David Gates following the death of his father. Okay, so we're talking about they died in the lyrics, and so that's why his father had died, and so he wrote this hit.
I can hear this song in my head.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you really? That's pretty
Yeah.
good. All right, so stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing.
Is that it?
Which one again?
No.
You're close. You're probably close.
I can't think of the name of it now, though.
Ah,
Yeah.
that's the idea. So that's 24th, signature. You like that silly rabbi joke?
That's pretty funny.
You like that?
I'm I'm sorry for being able to get that out because those are tough to tell. Those jokes with the, the assonance or the whatever it is, silly rabbi kicks her for fruit. Yeah. I mean,
Of course, the youngsters won't know anything about the commercial, but us oldsters will. Remember that, Craig?
Yes. They don't know.
I'm trying to think of the name of that bread song.
Okay. Well, we'll get into our email. How's that?
Okay, cool.
Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Rob Spinoza. Mark had to fly the coop, so he was only on for our first segment.
Yeah.
When we cut to the commercial break, we asked this trivia question. Again, the theme is They Died in the Lyrics. What was the 1972 Bread hit that was written by David Gates following the death of his father?
When you say it, I'm gonna know it, and I hear the song in my head, but I can't. Think
Everything I Own.
No, it's not. That wasn't the one. Okay, well, at least I don't feel so bad now.
I'll
Besides,
just
I
sing
didn't
it
like them
sometime.
anyway.
Really, I like them. They're a little bit slappy happy, but that's okay. Okay, so Rob, we
Yeah.
got an email from a listener that says,
That's our first problem.
yeah, well, you're gonna be very upset when you read this email here. It says, or when you listen to it, it says, my lender is driving me nuts, asking me. This is my emphasis.
Okay.
Here. My lender is driving me nuts, asking me to document deposits into my bank accounts. Why are they doing this, and why do they care about deposits?
Oh, okay, yeah, I didn't catch the first. So deposits, right.
Yeah.
Well, what I'll do is I'll preface the whole thing by saying bank statements and documentation of assets is one of the most difficult things. It causes the most amount of delay, the most amount of grief and consternation amongst clients because of sourcing deposits. One of the things that happened as a result of the fallout, the downturn in real estate, is lenders got ultra conservative about making sure that all the money in the transaction was money that they had taken into consideration, accounted for properly. So the reason they're hounding you about deposits is because they just make a blind assumption that if they don't know what the money is, it's either a gift or a loan.
Well, that used to be a big problem before, but then I thought they eased up on, okay, hey, Mom lent me some money to help buy the house.
Right. So in either case, gift or loan, there are specific requirements and guidelines that you have to follow, and those are going to depend on the type of program you're getting. For the most part, and again, there are some exceptions, for the most part, gift funds need to come from a family member. Okay, now FHA will make exceptions on that, and FHA will allow funds from an employer or gift funds from an employer, but for the most part, gift funds are family members only. Now, if it's a gift, as you know from the tax side, that's a taxable event. Right?
Well,
Can
actually,
be.
well, to get a little bit more complicated, the donor,
Right,
not
donor,
the recipient,
right, not the recipient.
would have to pay taxes, but there is a uniform gift
Right.
tax credit, so theoretically they don't have to pay taxes.
But they are
But
concerned about it when they hear the fact that now, okay, I'm signing a gift donor letter for my son or daughter to buy a house,
and it's larger than 12,000 or
14,000, whatever. Right, exactly. So a gift has specific requirements now because you got the gift part of it.
Okay.
Will the lender allow the gift? Number one, who's the gift from? And what you're really doing there with the gift is you're saying, I don't expect any repayment. Obviously, it's a gift. Okay.
What did you say? I went up to Reno and I gambled and I won.
So We'll get to that in a
Oh,
second. I don't
open up the can of worms. That one, Pandora's box.
yeah. So the next thing is that let's look at the loan side of it. So now there's a large deposit into your account. And by the way, large deposits, again, for the most part, are typically defined as greater than 50% of your gross monthly income. Okay, so if you make $10K a month and the bank sees a $5,000 deposit that's not a payroll deposit, they're going to ask about it. Now there is underwriting discretion involved in that. It's a judgment call. So if it's $4,000 in our example, but you have no other deposits on your 2 months of statements, they probably are going to question it.
I thought they were going down as little as like $500.
FHA will do that.
Gotcha,
Okay, so again, it depends on the program, but we've seen a little bit of a loosening of that guideline to go back to 50% of gross. Now, if it's a loan, like let's say somebody makes you a personal loan, now you've got an issue where they're going to say, okay, what are the terms of the loan and how much is the repayment? Because if there's a repayment, we have to factor that into your debt to income ratio. Okay? So the reason they're hounding you about deposits is because if you move money into your account, it could have implications for the approval.
Does it also have to do with the fact that maybe even if you don't have to pay it back, they are saying, well, maybe this guy doesn't make that much money.
Right.
Can he afford the
Right.
mortgage?
And yes, it's all tied to that.
That's
So
a fair question.
it's a
really.
legitimate concern on the lender's part. Where it gets crazy is that a lot of people will take a deposit. I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say we're using our $5,000 example again. If you had a transfer from your checking to your savings or your savings to your checking, most statements are going to show that with an electronic ID.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so that's easy to document. But let's say you take that $5,000 out, you take it home, you pay $100 out to your son or daughter or whatever for whatever they gave them, and then you put $4,900 back into your checking account in an ATM.
So
Now you got a whole different story.
Yeah, so it's not you can't trace it as easily.
Exactly, and so that's where people get hung up. And lenders are looking at 2 months of statements. So we go back 2 months. We'll look at all the deposits on that, and if they're large deposits, we'll ask you to paper trail them, and then that goes down whatever rabbit hole goes down. And that's why you have to be careful when you're in the process. That's why this gentleman or woman, unfortunately, is in a situation where they are probably they probably got caught up in something they never expected.
Gotcha.
Now the Reno thing. How much time do we have to talk about that?
I got a few minutes. I mean, listen. I mean, if you just, I'm not suggesting people lie, but
Right.
what would happen if they just either couldn't remember where it came from, or if they just said, you know what, I'll just tell them I wanted gambling.
Right. So, you get into a situation like that where cash is the worst thing that can happen to an account, because if you deposit cash, there's nowhere to trace it. Yeah, I've heard all the stories. What if I go to the teller and take a picture of me with the cash? No, that doesn't work. Okay? That will not adequately document cash deposits into your account. Cash is really tough, and you have to be very careful. And we advise folks. Now, in the case of gambling winnings, if that was truly the case, I suppose you could make a story and case about it, right?
Well, if you got a 1099, it'd be easy.
You're not going to have the 1099 yet.
Yeah, exactly.
But and I don't know. I've never been so fortunate to win enough money at a casino. Do you get a receipt or something? I don't know how that works.
But you can always ask for
probably
something. Yeah.
What I would likely do in a case like that, to be creative, is I'd say, okay, if I stayed in the area, I might produce a credit card statement that showed I was in the area. I don't know. I mean, I try to support it, but more than likely, if a lender, the worst thing that could happen is the lender could negate the bank statement.
Yeah.
The best thing that could happen, and we used to do this all the time, is they would back the deposit out. And you still qualify with it in. And we're seeing a return to normalcy in that regard. People are being...
If you just walk into the bank with a deck of cards, will that suffice that you know what you're doing?
Depends on the bank, I guess, and where...
That's great.
Yeah, so it's interesting. And again, guys, if you have questions about that kind of stuff, let me know, because the deposit thing, it's like the sleeping dragon. It just comes up when you least expect it, and it can really haunt an otherwise good file.
Do you do home equity lines?
We do.
And let me ask you, what percentage do you do? Like, if the house is only worth, let's say, $500,000, you'll probably do 80%. But if it's worth $3 million, you probably don't do 80%.
That's correct. So home equity loans are, depending on how you get them, we find in our situation we don't do standalone home equity lines of credit any longer. We may in the near future. So we will only do them as part of a purchase or a refinance transaction where we're also doing the first loan. And in those cases, we can typically get up to a 90% combined loan to value. my understanding of the rest of the market when you go out and you just get a standalone line of credit is it's somewhat less than that, usually about 80 or so.
Oh yeah.
And then the next thing you run into, there's a few really good lenders who play in that environment of home equity lines of credit, but where your example of a $3 million property, they will usually not go that high in combined loan to value because they won't make a line that big. And they also have restrictions, lenders have restrictions or guidelines that pertain to max combined liens.
Yeah.
That's where you get into trouble when you're trying to do that.
Okay, so I'm sure the audience is going to have lots of questions for you, various home
I won't
loans. And,
entertain any pari-mutuel betting
Yeah.
kind of stuff. I don't. I can be found at on the Best of Investing website. My profile's on there. I work for RPM Mortgage. I work out of the Mill Valley office. 415-367-5959.
how far away is your furthest client that you've dealt with?
I can lend in the entire state, and I'd have to think about that. But I'm pretty sure I have some as close to the border south as possible. And
Like San Diego, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
Chula Vista, I think, is right there at the border. But
How'd you get clients like that? Just
very
referral?
interesting. Yeah, it typically happens by referral. So you do, San Diego, for example, has a big military presence.
Oh yeah.
So you'll do one VA loan, and then lo and behold, they're talking at the base, and then the other guy lives further away.
Gotcha.
Get another one, too.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. All right, we are going to go to our third and final trivia question, where the theme is they died in the lyrics. Kind of depressing.
I'm dying at
You're
this
dying
trivia
at this one.
contest.
There you go. All right. What was the weapon with which a baker killed a milkman in the 1971 Benny Hill hit Ernie? I never saw this. Benny Hill is usually, he had that funny, funny show, the Benny Hill show.
Benny Hill show was great.
But yeah,
Yeah.
very English humor type, but he was pretty funny. All right, the first caller with the correct answer is going to win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. What was the weapon with which a baker killed a milkman in the 1971 Benny Hill hit Ernie? Stay with us. The Best of Investing will be right back. I was trying to move that because
Yeah,
because
sorry.
I gotta do this, but he wants you to look at that once in a while.
I'll do that now. You know what? That's actually true. Even when Mark's here, it's
Incidentally, I won at the racetrack 4 or 5 years ago at Bogate Fields. $1,500. I didn't have my Social Security card on me, and I had to go back to the track, and they'll 1099 you.
Oh,
So they do.
but is
have,
it over a certain amount?
yeah,
Obviously?
it's 50. Actually, I bet $1 and it's 1,500.
Good for you.
So a big long shot, but yeah, if you get $1,500,
But what's the threshold?
600, I think.
600? They'll 1099 you over that.
I think that's what it is.
That makes
no,
sense.
it's 1,500.
Yeah, well, you got 1,500, but after
Oh.
But if you get at least 600,
Yeah,
then
they'll
they'll give you a
1099.
1099.
they're not going to 1099
And
you
if
for
you
a
only
buck.
afford a buck.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So it's 600. I thought it was 1,500, but and I've never been 1099
At a casino.
in Nevada when in the days when I was a
I
bookie.
can't imagine the
Oh,
casinos.
bookie.
Yeah, and I take money there, and they pay me 10%, and I lay
Yeah, I
down
can't
$10,000,
imagine.
$20,000.
Hey, where were you a bookie?
Oh God,
Really?
1976 and
I
the
didn't know
80s.
that.
Well, I don't advertise it now. It's a little bit better. You can say it. And
That's a great
Caesars would pay me 10%, bringing people.
Not bad. Hope you don't do it anymore.
I got busted once.
Oh, that's right. I guess it was illegal.
It's illegal in the States here, but not
Yeah,
there.
Not there.
In where? Where's it
Nevada.
not?
Nevada was legal, but here it was not legal.
Okay, we have a long segment, 14 minutes.
Alright.
What would you like to cover?
So this one's pretty interesting. Most buyers fail to shop for a mortgage, so I think that can go in a bunch of different directions.
Okay.
And we can also cover. I mean, the earth for selling stuff's kind of boring, but five common buyer's remorse culprits.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a
That'll
bunch
cover
of
it.
stuff. I mean, I'm going to go into the buyers failing to shop for a mortgage. I think that can go in a lot of directions. So
Okay.
yeah,
Sounds good.
cool.
Are you ready?
I am rolling.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, if you look over here, it really looks good.
Okay.
When you feel like it.
Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Rob Spinoza. When we cut to the third commercial break, we asked this trivia question about They Died in the Lyrics. What was the weapon with which a baker killed a milkman in the 1971 Benny Hill hit Ernie?
Rolling pin?
A stale pork pie. Now, who would get
The
that
Benny
one?
Hill Show.
The Benny Hill Show. Sorry, Benny Hill. Okay, so Rob, you got a few other things you want to cover with us.
Yeah, some fun stuff. I mean, when you're in the mortgage industry and you're in the trenches, you kind of got to look around to find stuff that's a bit humorous. But before we get to it, I thought I would talk about something that actually is kind of serious and really surprised me because not that I deal with a lot of rate shopping, but certainly you're aware that when you're dealing with a savvier client set, they have a lot of resources. I mean, they'll check out what their local bank or credit union is offering. They'll hear things on Pandora. They'll talk about, or they'll go and they'll check stuff on the website. But it says here, this article from Realtor Mag talks about what most buyers fail to shop for a mortgage. It says that less than 1/3 or 30% of consumers say they always shop around for the best rates on major financial loans, such as mortgage or auto loans. About 18% say they never look for better rates or prices on loans. So electronics, almost 70% of people check comparison shop for those. Flights, 70%.
I'm going to guess that because it appears it's probably easier to check on like electronics.
Exactly.
A Panasonic T40.
It is what it is wherever you go, right?
The loans have so many different intricacies.
I think that you are spot on with that, and I find that one of the things when I talk with folks, because number one is, in my line of work, there is certainly an intent to be able to put out very competitive pricing. When you're getting a home loan, people are going to have it for 15 or 30 years, and the amount of money they save at a better rate is significant. So you want to be competitive on costs and on rates. The other thing I find, though, is that what a lot of folks are really looking for is they're looking for clarity on what they're getting. And the comparison shopping thing works to a degree, but then beyond a certain point, it actually causes them more stress and more aggravation and makes the process harder.
Well, I'm going to guess a lot of it's just it's a trust issue with the
Big
guy
time.
you're dealing with.
Big time trust issue, and the worst dilemma that I see amongst clients is one where they're being told that they have a certain rate, and they don't trust the person telling them that.
Wow.
And they get caught in this. They get caught between, hey, look, I've been upfront with you about everything. I've answered every question you've asked me. I've provided clear detail on. I've been timely in my responses. And then you get this guy that doesn't return your calls. You can't locate him when you need him, and he's telling you his rate is an A+. And some people just get caught up in that, and they cannot shake it. They're so attracted to that possibility of a lower rate. They go down that road. Sometimes you don't hear from them, so you assume the best. But other times you get a call back about 2-3 weeks in, and it's, I don't want you to say I told you so, but
Yeah.
but and it's a really tough situation to be in. So
Well, that happens with Mark too. Where
I bet.
people, maybe try to shop him around.
because they think, oh, this guy is, he's charging me 9% or whatever, and they don't know that that's a great private money rate, and then Mark's been on the spot the whole time, and he's been getting, and this happens in lending too, and I think the lesson there is that there are so many factors in it, and one of the things that we learn time and time again, especially in the purchase market, is you'll see folks have $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 in earnest money on the line, and they're wringing their hands over what they think is a better rate somewhere, and you kind of have to leave them to their own devices on it because there's not a lot you can say. If you're so compelled to pursue it, what I tell folks is this. Nobody wants to do it, but it's good advice. If you were to go out and you were to get 10 quotes, right, from 10 different lenders, I don't care who they are, I don't care where they're located, I don't care if they're internet, I don't care if they're local, you get 10 quotes. You will be extremely lucky if you have 2 on one side of the spectrum, 2 on the other side of the spectrum, and 6 in the middle, okay? Because if you've done that, you've now figured out where you need to be. You probably should be working with a lender somewhere in the middle. Because If you've got outliers on both sides of the spectrum, there's a reason for that, but you've already established your baseline. You've got the vast majority, you've got 60% of your lenders telling you the pricing is all relatively consistent, and now you've got 40% of them, only 20 on each side, saying that they're outside of the market.
Well, and your business is very competitive. It'd be one thing if you're the only game in town, then what do you compare against?
Right.
But,
well, and I think that's unhealthy. So I think that consumers are in a situation where they are smart to shop. I think there is a right way to shop, but I also think there's a time period in which you need to get your shopping done. And one of my colleagues has a great way of communicating this. He basically says, look, we're about to invest a ton of time and energy into your file, and this is the date by which I'd like to have your decision about who you're going to go with. Doesn't always hold, of course. Never does, because things are complex in real estate. But that's a really good way to approach it, because if you're a consumer and you appreciate that as well, not only is it going to make the lender's life easier, it's going to make your life a lot easier too. Because you can't take that uncertainty too far down the road in a case where you're the one with the most at risk. And I think we find that time and time again.
You're listening to Rob Spinoza from RPM Mortgage in Mill Valley, giving us the expert advice.
Well, he's trying to. I mean, it's a competitive market out there, and home financing is one of those things where people don't do it as frequently as we do. Yeah. So when buyers go into the market and they bring in those concerns, and those concerns are largely fostered in an environment where you're just not familiar with it. You have a lot at stake. Yeah. So yeah.
There was something else that you had there.
Yeah, I was going to talk about. We were talking before about sellers and a list of things that some sellers don't recognize are happening. Well, I have sort of the other side of the balance on that, and it's the 5 common buyer's remorse culprits. You want to take a shot of any of them?
I sold too little. The price too little.
Buyers.
Oh, buyers. Okay. I paid too much.
That's not on the list.
That's not on the list of
buyer's remorse. So I guess, I think it should be, but buying too big of a home.
Yeah.
Number one. So they think, I got more than I needed, don't need the space. One thing I have heard from real estate agents along those lines is people buying in areas that they're not familiar with. And they get there and then they're kind of like, we're kind of out of sorts here. We don't realize it's as far as it was from work or from wherever they're going.
I can see that.
Second one, awkward layouts.
Of the house.
Of the house, yeah.
It's like they walked through it, but then they didn't.
Now they move their stuff in. And
interesting.
Number 3, not considering what's missing, like what features they wanted that they didn't get, maybe. And you know what's interesting
like
too?
Electricity.
We're not talking Western Ridge.
Oh yeah.
That's a little nudge.
Like special Wi-Fi, Cat 5s, and all that.
Right, and number 4 doesn't surprise me at all. Actually, step back to number 3 for a second. Not considering what's missing, I think that is something that a lot of folks are going to have in this market because the competition has been so severe that
they haven't thought about the whole
thing.
Maybe also the location, like the schools and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm sure there's an element to that. The school thing, if a buyer has kids, I usually see that way up near the top of the list, even if they sacrifice on what they want now.
What's number 4? That they have one, they go, we don't want
one.
Not the other way around. It's not that they look and they go, I didn't realize it didn't have a pool.
That's right.
It's the opposite.
It's like, and then it's like owning a boat, I hear, right? And then number 5 is falling for fads. So things in the house like features, like it says here, kind of funny, brass hardware and stuff like that. Which is popular.
And electricity. No, they realize they give you electricity. I got it. Yeah, so it may be like, we paid a little bit too much.
Yeah, but how do you avoid the fad thing anyway, right? I mean, it's like.
Well, if it's there, it's there.
Yeah, but I mean, you buy a house that's contemporary when you buy it. It's not going to be contemporary forever.
Sure.
I mean, the remodeling industry thanks you.
Yeah. We did that some years back, and guess what? It's time again.
Yeah. Not funny how that works.
Yeah, very interesting. Any last little tidbits? We got a few minutes here.
Well, you know what? I mean, I think the buyer's remorse thing, the seller's thing, what it really highlights is the fact that a lot of the real estate market, especially right now, we talk about it like, it changes wildly. In some ways it does, but for the most part, the real estate market is so dynamic that trying to keep up with the trends in both the financing part of it and in the ownership and the sale of it.
Well, let me ask you, do people people use you sometimes, like either a sounding board or a psychologist,
time.
or
Yeah,
ask
all
your
the time.
advice? Yeah. Well, do you think I should be buying this house or anything? I mean, what
Well, yeah, the buy side of it, I try not to get into the arguments about buying the house itself. We do a lot of comparison rent versus own sort of stuff, and that comes with the turf of what we do.
Yeah.
But I don't try to advise somebody to say it's the best thing for you. I try to say, okay, objectively, here's what it is on both sides. Now you take this information and figure out if it works with your plan.
Yeah, because mostly they're coming to you for the financial part about figuring out how to pay for the loan.
I once
or
had
pay
a
for the house.
yeah, exactly. I once had a guy talk to me about the fact that when he filed his taxes, there was some component of it due to the purchase of the house and the sale of his other house, and he came back to me and said, "Well, we didn't take this into consideration when we got the loan." And I'm thinking to myself, that's not something I would have even been aware of. The sale of your previous home to acquire the new one would have not been something that I would have looked at in terms of getting you the best terms on your new loan.
Huh.
And so, to your point, do they use this as a sounding board? Yes, they do. But we have to be especially careful in our capacity that we're looking at it. Either we are looking at it or we are not looking at it comprehensively. A lot of times people come to us in the transaction. I need a loan for X. We're not employed to be a comprehensive financial advisor.
Yeah.
So overstepping our bounds in that regard until we know more is a situation that we have to be sensitive to.
Are you allowed to be discriminating? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, do you get to make subjective choices are you in lending?
Give me an example.
Oh, like you're just kind of getting the feeling that someone isn't, giving you all the information.
Yeah.
Yeah. So but if they fit the criteria, they fit the criteria. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it is a delicate balance. I think it requires a lot of judgment, and you have to be very careful. There's nothing you want to do as a lender that would in any way lead you to continue with a file that you believe did not have an ability to repay. That's the provision of the
It's like,
Dodd-Frank
a guy says, hey, treat me just like everybody else. If I can give you the documents that you're requesting,
Exactly.
you got to go through with it.
Exactly. That is a really tough call. It's a great question, and it's something that is it can be viewed in a number of different ways. If the outcome is good, you probably never hear about it. If the outcome is bad, then those things could be retraced back to the fact that you weren't discriminating enough. Yet on the other hand,
But that's more that's not so much the client. That would be the bank portion would be upset with you.
yeah, sure, exactly. If it came up that way, absolutely. So I think what it really requires is a loan intuition is what I call it, where something doesn't jive here and you just get a sense for it.
Just wait till the banks start making you guarantee it, or say,
Well,
hey, if he doesn't pay, you got to pay. It's like
You are individually liable under Dodd-Frank now. That is true. So, and the other part of it is that back in 2008, everybody in my capacity, more or less, that originates a loan has an NMLS identifier, and that goes all the way through to the servicing of the loan. So they could come back and say, hey, this guy's got a pattern of approving loans that don't perform.
I remember in Hawaii, there was a situation where appraisers, if they were off more than 5%, they were liable.
Wow.
So they really had to be very careful of how they appraise things.
I think there's two sides to a lot of that stuff. I agree that holding individuals responsible for their actions is generally a good thing.
Yeah.
I also think that real estate transactions are complex enough and the scope of our inquiry is limited enough that it's somewhere.
It has to be pretty blatant.
Yeah, exactly. The intent has to be.
All right, Rob Spinoza from RPM Mortgage. Thank you once again for joining
My
us.
pleasure.
All right, here's our thoughts for the day. Someone once said, "The past is to prove that no one is perfect, and the future is to prove that everyone can change." Very nice.
That's nice.
And another said, "It is much easier to aim for perfection than to look for it." Another good one.
That's a good one.
Tune
I
in
like
next
that one.
Tune in next week to The Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away more free vacations for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown. We're wishing you the best of investing. So long. Good. 8 seconds to spare.
So I'll see you next week.
Yes, sir. He's coming back next week.
Oh, you're coming back.
He's coming back just. Yeah, I'll be